live a decent life, you know? People might argue that some companies go a little bit too far in terms of earning profit. Some people might point the finger at a company like Boeing right now as a company that's trying a little bit too hard to make profit. And I don't know about you, but when an airplane manufacturer is more concerned with profits than safety, that doesn't make me want to get on a plane. Ford had a problem with that in the 1970s as well. Car manufacturer, they put profits way above safety in the 1970s to the point where they ended up having to pay so many lawsuits because the Ford Pinto was known for exploding when it was rear-ended because the gas tank was positioned in a really bad place. And so when like people got into crashes and they got run into from behind in a Ford Pinto, sometimes they would explode. And a lot of people died because of it. And Ford basically refused to acknowledge that there was an engineering flaw in the design. And they just were like, people are going to die, but we're going to make more money because of it. And we'll make more money even with the lawsuits. So we're just going to keep making it. And if people die, they die. And it was like, wow, okay, that's pretty rough. That's when you pay more attention to the accountants than what's right. And that's kind of messed up. They've gotten better. But like, yeah, there's stories like that all the time about businesses going a little bit too far in the name of making money. There's got to be, in my opinion, some kind of balance. Yes, you should make money because you're a business. Otherwise, you don't stay in business. But you don't need to make so much money that you make other people's lives miserable because you are making money. So, you know, there's a balance between doing the right thing and also earning a profit. So going back to health insurance, a group insurance premium. So many businesses offer group insurance plans for their employees. Group insurance costs less to purchase than individual insurance. A group insurance plan, by the way, basically means that you get a bunch of people together and you can buy health insurance for a group of people at a cheaper rate per person than if you go out on your own and you buy it individually per person. And so when they say group, it just means like with a business, they group all their employees together. The business goes to the insurance company and says, hey, we've got this many people that we want to provide or help provide insurance for. We've got a lot of people. And so let's negotiate a discount because I'm bringing you, the insurance company, a bunch of customers that you wouldn't otherwise have had. And so the insurance company says, yeah, we'll give you a little bit of a discount per person on that. Whereas if you try to go buy insurance for yourself or you're self-employed, it's going to cost you a lot more money to buy that for yourself than if you get a bunch of people together. It's like a group discount, right? So that's another reason why businesses will do that, is because they're able to get a discount per employee if they have a certain amount of people. Businesses often pay part of the insurance cost or the premium. So basically, if you don't know how insurance works, the way it works is every single month, kind of like car insurance, every single month you pay a certain amount of money to have insurance. And then if you need to use your insurance, you then have to pay more money when you actually go to a doctor or something like that. There's these things called deductibles, where if you pay, anybody know what a deductible is? Anybody ever heard that word, deductible? Car insurance has it too. So like if you have car insurance and you get in an accident and you have to pay to get your car fixed, you still have to, like, yeah, you pay your car insurance, but then you have to pay a certain amount above that in the event of an accident, whether it's like $250 or $500 or whatever. Health insurance is very similar in that if you have to go see a doctor, there are deductibles that you have to pay until you pay a certain amount over the course of the year. And then oftentimes the deductible goes away, but you still end up having to pay for things like co-pays and, you know, much smaller amounts than you'd have to pay without insurance, but it still costs money regardless. So the premium, that's all we're talking about today. Basically the monthly cost of insurance to have insurance. So companies will pay a certain portion, employees will pay the rest. So we're going to be talking about employees' share, the percent that the employee has to pay for their own insurance. And so the amount that the employee has to pay in a year is equal to the total amount of the insurance plan multiplied by the percent that the employee pays for. So if the insurance plan costs, let's just make this easy. If the insurance plan costs $1,000 a year and the employee pays 50% of that, then the employee is responsible for how much a year in health insurance? What's half of 1,000? 500. So that means that over the year, the employee pays $500. And then if you want to know how much that is each pay period, you would take the amount that you end up having to pay out of pocket for the year, and you divide it by the number of pay periods a year. If it's months, you divide by 12, etc. So that's what we're dealing with today. So we're first example here talking about Nadine. Nadine McClure is a carpenter for Ozark Construction Company. Sounds like Missouri. She has family medical coverage through Ozark's group medical plan. The annual cost for Nadine's family membership is $9,800. So the medical insurance company charges $9,800 for the year to have medical insurance. The company pays 75% of that cost. How much does she have deducted from her biweekly? How many times a year is that? 26. Yep. So 26 times a year, how much does she have deducted from her paycheck to pay for her health insurance? So step one is to figure out the percent that the employee pays. Now, this could be done without having to write this out. It's written out because this is the first example we're doing. But if you want to use mental math from here on out to do this, I'm fine with that. But if you want to know how much the employee is paying in terms of a percentage, you take 100% of the cost and you subtract the amount that the company is paying. What percentage does the company pay in this example? 75. So Nadine pays what percentage? 25%, which is equal to, as a decimal, because we always use decimals when we're doing this, as equal to 0.25. So if you want to figure out Nadine's annual payment that she has to make for having health insurance, you take the amount of the plan. How much does the plan cost for the year? Okay. And you multiply by the percent that Nadine owes, 0.25. So her responsibility for the year of her own health coverage is how much money? $2,450. So of the $9,800 for the year, she's paying $2,450 of that for the year. Now she gets paid bi-weekly. So in this particular example, we're going to take her deduction per pay period equal to the amount that she has to pay per year, $2,450, and divide it by how many times she gets paid per year, which is 26. So how much gets taken out of her paycheck every time she gets a paycheck for her health insurance? $94.23. There you go. So in addition to her federal income tax, in addition to her state income tax, in addition to her Social Security and Medicare deductions, she also has a fifth one for medical insurance. So those are 5 things so far that are being deducted every single time she gets paid. This is how much she gets deducted every single pay period for medical insurance. Any questions about that process before we look at that? Most of these calculations are very similar. They're not all exactly the same, but they are all quite similar. So let's go ahead and turn the page and take a look at a little bit more here. Not a whole lot more to go. We're going to have plenty of work time again today. Let's do number 1 together. I'll have you do 2 on your own, and then we'll take a look at the last example and call it a day. So number 1 here, the annual cost of insurance is $6,750. The employee pays 70%. So then the employee's share, so let's just write this, employee you don't have to write out the math on this one. If the employer is paying 70%, what percentage is the employee paying? 30. Good. 30%, which is 0.3. The annual cost is $6,750. So then, how do we want to call this? Let's say, what did it say on the last page? employee pays, in parentheses, I'm going to put YR for year because we have to find the annual. The employee pays. What's the calculation here that we're going to write for the annual payment for the employee? What math problem do we write for this? Employee pays for the year. Yeah, 6,570, the annual amount times the employee's share, which is 0.3. So 6,570 times 0.3. So how much does this employee have to pay per year? $1,971. Good. So now there are 12 pay periods, which is how often? Once a month. Okay. So let's go with employee pays. And then in parentheses, I'm going to write MO for month. This number divided by 12. Good. So we're going to have 1971 divided by 12. And then to the nearest cent, well, actually, we don't even have to round on this one. What's the answer? There you go. 164.25. All right. So now that we've worked through an entire example, try number 2. Take a couple minutes on that. Check back in at 11:15, and we'll see how we did. Yep. Side question on number 2. How often does that employee get paid? Yeah, every week. All right. What is the employee share on number 2? What percent? 20%. The employer pays 80%, which means the employee is responsible for 20% of that, 0.2. If we're looking for the annual amount that the employee pays, how much is it? $2,400, because we're taking the cost of the plan, which is $12,000, and we're multiplying it by 20% or 0.2. So the annual share that the employee has to pay for is $2,400, which means that in a 52 pay period year, which is weekly, the employee has how much taken out for health insurance? $46.15. Nice. There it is. Questions on that one? All good? Cool. This class honestly is a little bit, reminds me a little bit honestly of geometry in a way. Obviously what we're looking at is completely different, but I currently teach geometry as well. And I notice a lot of similarities in that we do a lot of the same calculations over and over and over. It's just a matter of setting it up correctly. And the calculations themselves are all pretty basic. We've got subtraction, multiplication, division. That's mostly what we do with our calculations, which is a lot of what happens in geometry. If you remember back to geometry, like the equations and stuff were basically the same types of equations for the entire year, but they all applied to different types of shapes and scenarios. And it was a matter of picking out the important information and writing it correctly, and then doing a couple simple calculations. So in that sense, I find this very similar to geometry. So let's talk about Kim Choi for a minute. Example 2, using some algebra this time. Kim Choi pays $115.80 per month. So this time it tells us how much money she pays a month for her medical coverage. And we also know how often she gets paid by the way this is written. So she gets paid 12 times a year. And every one of those 12 times she gets paid, she has $115.80 taken out for her medical coverage. Her employer pays 55% of the cost. How much is the total annual premium for Kim's health insurance? All right. So first thing we need to do is the first thing we've done on the first few problems, which is to figure out the amount that she is paying as a percentage. So if her company is paying 55%, what percentage is she responsible for? %. Decimal wise, what is that? 0.45. All right. So she is responsible for 45% or 0.45 of the month, not the monthly, of the annual total cost. This 115.80 is already 45% of the total monthly cost. So we're not going to multiply the 115.80 by 0.45. That would just reduce that even further, which we don't want to do. What we are going to do is with step 2, we're going to let A equal the annual premium for Kim's health insurance. And the reason for that is our variable is the thing that we don't know, which is the thing we're trying to figure out. It says, how much is the annual premium? That's what we're trying to figure out. That's the thing we don't know. Therefore, A is equal to the annual premium. We could use X, that's fine. But the thing that we're trying to figure out is the thing that becomes our variable. And so we're going to write and solve the equation for the deduction per pay period. And then we'll be able to figure out how to get from there. So let's keep going here. So the employee's percentage times the annual premium divided by the number of pay periods per year is equal to the deduction per pay period. That's the formula we're going to use. This is the formula that we've been using, by the way. If you take the employee's percent, you multiply it by the annual premium, that gives you the annual amount that the employee pays. Then you divide by the number of pay periods a year, and you get the deduction per pay period. This is exactly what we were doing to solve the previous 3 problems. But now we're given different bits of this formula. So do we know the employee's percent? What is it? The employer's is 55. What's the employee's? 45. Okay. So 0.45. Do we know the annual premium? No. What are we going to use for the annual premium? X, or in this case, A. All right. 0.45A divided by, do we know how many times she gets paid per year? So 12, okay. Do we know how much money she gets taken out of her paycheck every month? $115.80. So there's our equation. Write in the things we know, variable for the thing we don't, solve for the variable. So any questions as to how we wrote that? Anytime you're setting up an equation like this, from this lesson here, use this formula. You won't always have the same information provided to you every single time, but you can always use this same formula and plug in for the things that you know and create a variable for the thing that you don't. So let's solve. Right now, our A is being multiplied by 0.45, so we're going to have to divide by 0.45. However, before we can divide by 0.45, we have to get rid of this division of 12. How do you undo division in algebra? Multiplication, yeah, opposite operation or inverse operation. So what should we be multiplying both sides by? 12. Yeah, multiply both sides by 12. And we can talk about why in just a second here. So if we multiply by 12, the 12s cancel on the left, and we're left with 0.45a. Think practically for a second here. She's paying $115.80 a month. If we multiply that by 12, what are we figuring out? Her annual, yeah, the annual reduction of her salary based on how much she's paying for the year for her health insurance. So $115.80 every month gives us an amount of $1,389.60 for the entire year. That's how much money she pays out of her own pocket every single year for her health insurance, which is equal to 45% of the total cost of the plan. So then if we want to figure out the total cost of the plan, we have to get A by itself by doing what? Yeah, divide by 0.45. And when you divide a number by a number that is less than 1, that increases the value of that number. So when we divide both sides by 0.45, and when we divide 1389.6 by 0.45, we end up with an A value equal to what? 3,088. So that means that the annual premium is $3,088. Her company pays 55% of that. She pays 45% of that, which breaks down to monthly deductions of $115.80. Based on this process right here, I want you to answer number 3. And then as soon as we're done with that, you'll have the remainder of class to work. So try number 3. Let's go with 4 minutes. At 11:28, we'll check back in. Same setup. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Anybody have an answer? What the annual premium is? Maya, what'd you get? $35.72.73. Yeah, I see some nodding. Excellent. Yeah. $3,572.73 is our answer here. Good. So it's exactly the same as the last one, down to the fact that it's monthly. So the only things you have to change here are the employees' percentage and the monthly premium, the deduction that they're paying. So if the company pays 45%, that means that the employee is responsible for 55% or 0.55. If you went with X instead of A, that's totally fine. So the employee's share, percentage-wise, multiplied by the annual premium, divided by the number of pay periods, 12, is equal to the deduction, which is 163.75. So if you multiply both sides by 12, that gives you an annual amount that the employee has deducted of 1,965, which is equal to 55% of the total. And if you divide by 0.55, you get 35.72.73, rounds to 73 because it's just 0.72 repeating. But the 7 after the 2 rounds the 2 up to a 3. So 3,572.73. That's what we got. Questions on that one? Cool. Let's go ahead and get working. So